Welcome to another session, Wellness for Educators. This is going to be a half-hour yoga session. If you have space to work in, if you have a mat, go ahead and get a mat. Otherwise, a blanket, practicing on a rug, somewhere comfortable will be just fine. We're going to start standing. You don't really need anything. However, if you have a wall available or a chair available, we'll make use of either the wall or the chair. It's very dark out here today, so I'm afraid I've got a little bit more shadow than usual, making it dramatic. We're going to start standing and just let the arms swing from side to side. And I'm calling this sort of an active rest practice, with the idea being this, that sometimes if we are at the end of the day, it can be very hard to suddenly just drop to the floor and feel like, oh, this is restful, right? We have all this energy in our body and it needs to go somewhere first. So the thought behind this particular practice is to give yourselves a chance to sort of shake off, literally, as well as energetically, right? Some of the energy of your day, and then winding our way down toward the floor, imagining then you might actually be able to rest after unwinding. So we're going to inhale, reaching up. Exhale, release. Inhale, reaching tall. Opening that side. Exhale, release. And let this arm, our elbow could be bent if that were more comfortable. Just really sort of listening into some of the signals from your body about what feels skillful. It doesn't always have to look like mine. Inhaling, open, exhale, release. Another thing that can be helpful is just to let the breath go with a sigh. We'll take a few different breath patterns in this practice, and this sighing to let go can be your first. And then bringing hands to the hips and taking nice, as generous a circle you can with your pelvic bowl. So the knees and ankles soften and going around as much or as little as feels possible, taking it the other way. Hopefully feeling some movement through the pelvis, the glutes, the front of the hips, maybe some pelvic floor, abdominals, just kind of loosening things up. And then maybe hopefully you like to dance, taking a little figure of 8 with your hips as if you were taking a nice easy salsa, undulating the tissues, and then the other way. Again, there's still softness in my ankles and knees. It can be awkward when you reverse it. Let it be awkward, that's fine. Bringing the feet together, knees together, thighs together, whatever touches, touches, whatever doesn't, doesn't. We're just going to move around the knee joint very gently. Please don't do this if it doesn't feel comfortable in your body. And then the other way. And the ankles, again, are soft. I'm feeling the broad aspect of my feet, my pinky toe, outer heel, inner toe, big toe, inner heel, and stepping wide once more. Lifting all 10 toes, and I have found it can be helpful to lift and spread all 10 fingers at the same time. Lifting, relaxing, lifting, and relaxing. Let's take that one more time. Opening the fingers, opening the toes, and relaxing the hands down, lifting one heel. Spreading the toes wide. You could take this, sometimes it's interesting to work with hands and feet at the same time, noticing differences, noticing similarities. Giving a little push, so I'm just lifting the heel of my hand, heel of my foot at the same time. A little feedback coming in through the palm, the fingers. It's nice to stretch the toes and the fingers themselves. And then let's go ahead and take just a couple up, over, and down. Gives you a chance to check in with your balance and not worrying about it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just an opportunity to notice. Good. Coming onto both feet. Bring the arms up, palms face the ceiling. We're going to hinge at the elbow and release with a little bend, catch in the knees. Ha. Again, a little vocal ha. 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 Or ha. Doesn't have to be deep. Ha. Just maybe a little ha. Circle the elbows. See if you can let the shoulder blades glide on your body, gliding the other way. Good. Letting the elbows come forward, up, opening wide and down. One more stretch here for the hands. We're going to reach the palms back, pointing towards the floor, fingers stretched wide, and then rolling up into gentle fist, pulling back and wide, up into gentle fist, pulling back and wide, up to gentle fist. One more time. And then circling the wrists. If you like, this is a nice little mobility for the fingers, pinching the first finger and thumb, circling the wrist, switching middle finger and thumb, circling ring finger and thumb, circling pinky and thumb. And now going the other way from the pinky to the ring finger, to the middle finger, to the first finger. And then just taking a moment, just as we did, loosening up the hips, see if you can just kind of find some organic ways that you might want to move your shoulders, perhaps getting into a deeper stretch. Maybe now this position feels interesting or accessible. Just kind of let yourselves have a moment. And then we're going to come to the wall or to a chair. I will demonstrate both, just so depending on what you're working with, you've got a model. So if I were to do this at the chair, hands on the back of the chair, if that were a problem, right? If you were tired or if there are issues in the wrist, you could use your forearms as well. Walking your feet back away from the back of the chair. You could also do this at a kitchen counter. You could do this at a high desk, a bookcase, a bureau, and then letting your hips come back over to your heels. Depending on how your legs feel, you may want to bend your knees to release the tailbone back, let the belly drop a little bit towards the floor. You might want to bend one knee and then the other. Notice how that sends the stretch sort of around into the outside edge of the hip and a little bit into the outside edge of the thigh. That may be useful to you, right? With the hands, it looks like this. And don't worry about going really, really deep here. It's more interesting to sort of notice the shoulder connection to your trunk. See if you can make a little space down the side body, letting there be length coming into the back of the legs. I would recommend not dropping your head, but letting your gaze, letting your ears be bookended by the arms, right? And if you were doing that at the wall, you get to adjust the height. You can stand at the wall and have the arms higher, walking back. Notice. Oh, that feels good. Walking back a little further and noticing, right? So we're just inviting the back lines of the body from the soles of your feet, up the back of your legs, up the back of the spine, shoulders, out through the arms, out through the neck and the head, to have a long stretch. So this is downward dog. You could come up to vertical, let the body have a long line, and once more reach back. So really, now that you've seen the shape, a few different ways, really letting yourselves explore this. And if you can, let your out breath begin to lengthen so it's longer than your in breath. And the in breath doesn't have to be deep, it could be a little sip of breath. And then gently, we're going to walk the feet back to the wall. You do need to come to a wall now, or a door jamb. You could do this at a door jamb with hands on either side of the door. We're going to walk the arms up as high as you can on the wall. Feet are still on the floor, but now what I'm going to do is actually give a squeeze to my inner thighs, pelvic floor, abdominals, glutes. So I'm rooting down into my legs. I'm actually even going to send my heels away from each other. And now I'm going to rise up. So energetically occupying the outside edge of the foot and then rising up onto the ball of the foot. So the weight is distributed from the pinky toe to the big toe. And then there's energy rising up the center of your legs, that inside seam. There's lift. And I'm going to slowly, so as I'm lifting, keeping that quality of lift, I'm going to let my heels slowly come down, dragging my arms behind, shoulders get a stretch, back gets a little bit of traction, and then I'm going to release away from the wall. We're going to do that one more time. If this is troublesome for your shoulders, please don't feel obliged, right? You could go back to down dog. Rising up, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. You could even put a little pillow if you had one between your thighs to activate the squeeze, or a yoga block if you had one. And then lowering the heels down slowly, keeping the contraction in the leg and core, and coming down slow, dragging the hands, bending the elbows, letting this all happen really slowly. Releasing and then gently rolling out the shoulders, coming back to the floor. We're going to come down to the floor. If you would like to come down with the assist of a chair, please feel free to. If you're confident, comfortable coming down without the assist, that's great too. I'm just going to demonstrate that. It's just always nice to get to see a little bit of education here. Hands to a chair, one leg back, coming down. And here we are. So we're on the floor. I'm actually going to grab a blanket for my knees. If you would like a blanket for your knees, go ahead and pause me. Run grab the blanket. Maybe you have it nearby. And bring that under your knees. Good. So we're going to take something called monkey, which is going to be a stretch, another stretch for the back of the legs. It includes a lunge. So I'm going to demonstrate with my left leg forward first, right leg back, thinking about being active. So I'm actually really giving a little bit of a squeeze here to the glute, feeling the front of my thigh opening. I'm going to take a bit of a lunge forward. And as I'm lunging forward, I'm still lifting. I'm not kind of hanging out on the bones. I want to be really active, lifting the ribs away from the hips. I'm going to come forward in this lunge, pushing back, letting my fingertips touch down, hinging from the top of the thigh, letting that front leg lengthen, toes point to the ceiling. And then walking back. So here we are. We're in monkey, coming forward in this lunge. I am sorely tempted to let go, so to remind myself, keep lifted, rocking back, walking forward, keeping your breath steady once more. If you can use that extended exhalation. Rocking back. Now I'm going to come back up to my kneeling pose, shift the back shin so it's now turned. And now I'm going to take the same kneeling, but I've got a slightly different orientation here in my hips, always keeping that quality of lift. And you might like this side opening. So similar to standing, but now here we are on our knees, one knee and one squatting leg, opening back and forth. Take That one more time. I'm going to come back up to vertical. Same arm as supporting knee comes to ground. Pushing down into the floor, letting my head turn, letting my top shoulder open, and taking a twist. Reaching those fingertips for the ceiling, looking up to that hand if it's skillful, looking out to the horizon if it's not comfortable in the neck. Taking a couple of breaths here. Again, if it feels comfortable to let it go with a sigh, let it go with a sigh. If it feels comfortable to let that arm open back further, stretching the front of the chest, go right ahead. If not, don't. Finally, I'm going to turn to the floor with that top hand. And as I turn, I'm lengthening this leg. And I'm going to just play here. I've got my back toes tucked under. I'm going to show you here because it's about this now. I'm going to reach back as long as this is comfortable in this knee, reaching back. I've got my arms a little bit asymmetrically positioned to help leverage this pull and push. And I'm going to now show you, I suspect you'll be feeling it in the inner thigh. Reaching back. You could, I've got my foot still firmly planted, but you could also let that foot leave the floor. So I'm getting a ball of the foot stretch on the bottom leg and inner thigh, suddenly back of the leg, inside seam. All right, so make this interesting for yourselves. And working with a slow, extended exhalation if that's comfortable. We're going to fold that leg under and take this all on the other side. So if you remember, we'll bring the right leg forward first. My orientation here is hips are pointing towards that knee, opening this back leg, but there's activation, right? A little bit of a glute engagement, right? You could also bring it up. You don't have to bring your hands to the floor. Rocking forward and back, lengthening the front of this knee, rolling forward, right? Choosing whether or not it's skillful to add the fingertips touching down. I like to do this. I'm not demonstrating with yoga blocks because if people don't have them, it just always feels like, oh, I needed them. But if you have yoga blocks, I use them here to extend my arms and just grab a hold and walk them forward. So it's like I have stilts for my arms. You can kind of imagine. That might create some spaciousness. Sinking back one last time. Coming back up to the 90-90, turning this back shin under. I'm on a little bit of an angle. There we go. So this foot is pointing directly back. This hip is open on an angle that feels skillful to you in your hip. Doesn't have to look like my shape. Taking the weight over, pushing, pushing. So we're shifting the weight, engaging, pushing the weight back, adding the arm if that's skillful, over and back, letting that side body open. Back and forth. And then coming up. Same arm as kneeling leg comes to ground. Top shoulder turns, head turns, shoulders turn. Top arm reaches for the ceiling, opening the chest. Perhaps letting your gaze also look up. Perhaps letting that arm open past vertical. Maybe letting your head come back to the horizon. Like, here's a chance to do a little bit of self-research. What feels nice in your tissues? Do you begin with a big gesture? Do you begin with a small gesture and let it grow? What helps you? Letting that arm come back around now to ground as you straighten that side leg. Back toes might tuck under, they don't have to. Again, this is personal. Figuring out for yourselves. A little asymmetry in the hands I find is help stabilize as you reach the tailbone back. So you want to think of sending your tailbone into the space behind you lengthening through that inner thigh, pausing at the bottom for a breath, maybe releasing that foot so the heel turns and the toes point to the ceiling. Really being curious here. There are lots of different ways to sort of meet some of these shapes, so finding a way that works for you best. I just released my back toes and find I can go a little bit deeper into this stretch if I'm not trying to also stretch the ball of the foot. So again, being a little bit curious. Bringing the weight forward, folding that leg under. So now we're on hands and knees, letting your hips sink back towards your heels to child's pose. Again, I'm going to invite you to research for yourselves. Does that overhead arm range feel comfortable after the work we've been doing? Maybe you'd prefer to stack your fists one on top of the other and bring them under the forehead. Resting here. Breathing into the back body. Some of you may find you want to bring your forehead to the floor. Open the knees. Let the arms rest by your side. See if you can breathe into your back, extending the exhalation. When you're ready, walking the hands forward if they're back. We're going to lower down onto the abdomen for crocodile pose. Letting the forehead rest comfortably on the back of your hands. Letting the legs lengthen out behind you. Once again, feel free to employ an audible exhalation. Letting the breath go with a sigh, yielding or softening any tension that feels like it's holding you. Scanning the body, noticing are there places you might wiggle, relax, soften, and then yield a little bit more deeply toward the floor. You might turn your big toes in, let your heels relax out. Notice if that turns off a certain kind of constant engagement in the thighs and hips that feels like it's a softening thing. If you don't like it, don't use it. One more breath here. And then we're going to roll over onto our backs. Taking that however you like. Maybe one arm reaches overhead. Coming around, I need to scoot a little bit so I can bring my spine down on my blanket. Working with a blanket, feel free to do that. We're going to come down to the floor, to the backside, rocking back and forth with the knees hugging into the chest. A little massage for the low back. Letting one foot come down and then the other. Letting the arms open wide to the side. Pausing for a breath. Feeling the chest opening. Adjusting, letting the back, the spine shift around a little bit until you find it is in a comfortable state. We're going to let the knees gently fall to the right, gaze to the left. Your knees do not have to come all the way down to the ground. In fact, I find it's really helpful to keep some height under the bottom leg. So I'm going to bring my knees to the left, my gaze to the right. If you really love a big side twist, you're welcome to take the knees all the way over. You might play with separating your feet a little wider You're going to show this from another angle. Taking the feet wider and letting the knees, one knee fall inside the other foot, coming up to center and the other way. I always recommend people do some research here around what is a comfortable twist for you. Some folks might want to bring their knees up to the chest and take them over to the side and have the latitude of the knees be higher. That can sometimes be more comfortable on the sacrum, on the lowest aspect of our spine and hip joint. Mm-hmm. And then when you feel ready, coming back to center, lowering the feet down. Go ahead and let the knees fall in towards each other, the feet step away from each other. Notice how that may lengthen the low back, or almost let the low back, the lumbar curve touch the floor. And just taking a breath or two here. Extending your exhalation. Sip of breath in through the nose. Breathing out through the nose, extending that out breath. Taking a moment to notice, noticing bodily sensations, notice the mind, the skin, breath rhythm, heart rate. What's changed since we began moving? If you have the opportunity to remain in this resting position, please feel free to. Perhaps this is just before a practice you've done just before bed. I hope it creates a softening, a relaxing quality in your body, nourishing yourself so that you can fill the cups of others. I'm so glad to have spent this time with you. Please know that I look forward to seeing you here again soon.